Hi, I'm Nikki Lowe, and welcome to the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show, where I share insights and interviews that support women to combine their family, work, and life in a more successful and sustainable way. Ever wondered how other women manage their careers with motherhood? When I first became a mum, my fascination with how other women did it started. How were they combining their work and motherhood in a way that worked for them? Maybe I'm nosy, but I like to think of myself as curious. Maybe it's because I saw other women thriving and I wanted to know how they were doing it. I've learned over the years that a key element of performance is what they call in NLP modelling. Modelling is observing and copying the ways others achieve results, and it makes it easier to try out different approaches to see what works for us. If you want to know how to do something, find some people who are good at that thing and ask them what they do. And that's just what I'm going to be doing. If, like me, you find yourself wondering how other women do it, then you're going to want to make sure you're on my email list. In the next few weeks, I'll be sending out details of the How She Does It mini-series. For How She Does It, I'm interviewing 5 incredible working mothers and pulling back the curtains on how they do it, revealing the secrets, strategies and lessons that they've learned along the way that we can all learn from. You're not going to want to miss out on this. So head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk and make sure you've signed up to my emails, and you can make sure you don't miss out. Welcome to this episode. I'm your host, Nikki Lowe, and today I'm exploring, what do you see when you look up? In this episode, I'm sharing the impact of not having positive working mother role models for our careers. If I look back 20 years ago when I was in my mid-20s, enjoying the success in my corporate career, something shifted for me. I couldn't put my finger on it at the time. I couldn't find the words for it, but I felt it. And it was only years later that I realised what was going on for me, and I'm going to share that with you today. But before I dive in, I'd love for you to share this episode with someone who you know who needs reminding that they're not alone as a working mum. So please can you share this episode with a working mum or two that pops in your head as you listen. My mission is to support as many working mums on their journey as possible. And so I'd be really grateful if you supported them by offering this free podcast. If it's useful for you, I hope you pass that on. And if you enjoy listening to the show, I'd love it if you left me a review. Just head over to wherever you listen to your podcast and click the ratings and reviews, just like this listener did who put this review called Pearls of Wisdom. Nikki's podcasts are the pick-me-up that I need when I'm feeling overloaded, doubting my abilities, and generally inefficient and ineffective. It's been amazing to realise I'm not on my own in feeling the pressure of working and managing family. I've shared this podcast with so many of my friends. Every working mum needs to discover Nikki's podcast and the relief and tools that they can bring to make your life so much easier. You're doing an amazing job. So thank you to that person that left a review. I think it was KTW8TAB2010. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I really love listening and hearing from you, the listeners. So thank you. Do drop me an email or tag me on social media. So now let's get back to, what do you see when you look up? As I said, something shifted for me in my mid-20s in my career. I started feeling disconnected from my employer and my organisation. Now, let me be clear, I was working for one of the world's best employers at the time, a Silicon Valley technology company that was a fantastic place to work. So it was only years later that I realised what influenced me to leave a highly lucrative career that I was succeeding in. It was, I didn't like what I saw when I looked up. And what I mean by that is I couldn't see female leaders that represented how I envisaged my life to be. Firstly, there were very few female leaders, which I know is still, unfortunately, far too common. But of the few that they were mostly single, highly driven women who had either chosen or found themselves in a situation where they didn't have children, or they were working mothers, but they were working like they didn't have families. They were trying to emulate the men around them. They were working all the hours and appeared to be sacrificing their outside lives, their lives out of work for their work. They rarely talked about their children. It was it's almost like they didn't exist. I now realise they were probably trying to protect their hard-won careers by trying to prevent the motherhood penalty holding them back. Like they were trying to hide the fact that they were mothers for fear that it would penalise them. And at that point in my career, I was already on the brink of burnout. I was pushing myself hard in my corporate career to succeed. And I knew deep down that if I added children into this cocktail of work-life balance, it would tip the balance in a really dangerous way, even though I wasn't ready for children at that point in my life and my career. But I now realised that I didn't like what I saw when I looked up. So I stopped feeling inspired and motivated to continue to climb the corporate ladder. I was being paid incredibly well in my mid-20s. I was highly regarded in my company. I had a bright future ahead of me, not only in that company, but in the industry. But I decided to pull the ripcord at the age of 28 and left my career to start my own business. At the time, it didn't make logical sense to anyone around me. And if I'm honest, I couldn't justify it in a rational way myself at the time either. But I felt deep down that this was the route that I needed to take. And I stepped away from that lucrative career that I'd had pretty good career prospects in. All the hard work was left on the table, along with my corporate benefits package, company car, and future earnings. Looking back, I now realise that if I'd been able to look up and see women who were role modelling being working and mothers in a way I could aspire to be, then I would have been much less likely to walk away from my company and my corporate career. If I'd seen women who were, as Elliot Ray from Music Football Fatherhood calls, parenting out loud. So if I'd seen women who were parenting out loud, who'd perhaps got pictures of their children on their desk or that shared that they were leaving the office at 4:30 to pick their children up from nursery, or who were just open about what it took to raise a family while building their careers, I might have been inspired. I might have seen how it was possible for me to do the same, but I didn't. So I made the decision to leave corporate and my career, really, before I consciously knew why. And it's only years later that I realised the impact to me personally of not having positive working role models, of working mum role models above me and around me. But also the impact to my employer, the brain drain cost. My company had spent a fortune hiring and training me. They even paid for me to go to Las Vegas on an all expense paid trip for a week with my husband for kind of sales achievement celebration, only for me to walk out the door 7 years later. The loss of the invaluable social and intellectual capital. I'd built deep trusted relationships with customers and suppliers that were impacted when I suddenly left. The lack of female representation. We now know that over 75% of consumer decisions are made by women and influenced by women. So by an organisation not reflecting customer buying, it creates this disconnect between what they're selling and the people that are buying. And the talent pipeline costs of recruiting, training, and integrating someone into an organisation as a replacement. The lack of business continuity, and the list goes on. Not to mention that the research now shows that gender diverse companies are more likely to outperform their competition by about 15%. And that's according to the McKinsey Diversity Matters report. And we know from the data that this is now more important than ever. McKinsey's Women in the Workplace report from September 2021 said that 1 in 3 women are now considering downshifting or leaving their careers completely because they're faced with leaning out to protect their well-being. We know that women are burning out faster than they were a year ago and at a faster rate than men. And the more women progress in their careers, the more difficult their experience becomes, with 4 in 10 women now considering leaving their organisation. The McKinsey report also showed that being an only increases those challenges. For example, being the only women on a team, and being a double only makes it even harder. So, for example, being the only woman who is also a mother. So, maternal bias and the maternal wall are still significantly challenging for women. So role models are so important for working mothers. When you see a role model, what you see is a person who has the courage to be who you wish you could be. They inspire you, they show you what's possible, and they give you permission to do it on your own terms. And we need role models of women from a diverse range of professional and personal backgrounds, successfully navigating career and family in a variety of different ways, in ways that feel accessible and relatable. There was a quote I read in an article called Why Women Are More Burned Out Than Men, and this was published in a BBC article in 2021. And the quote was quite shocking. It said, one of the greatest concerns workplace experts harbour is that poor mental health among women in the workplace could discourage future generations from setting ambitious professional goals, particularly if they want to start a family. That could exacerbate the gender inequalities that already exist in terms of pay and seniority in the labour market. And I found that so sad that future generations of women may not aspire to do the things that they want in their professional careers because they can't see the people role modelling it in a way that feels positive and sustainable for them. And I found that women overwhelmingly want to hear more about workable templates for their lives and careers. That's like practical advice and ideas from other women at the same life stage on how to raise a family and continue to move their careers forward. Because when we see other women doing it, it gives us the hope and inspiration that we can do it too. It can stop women feeling like I did, that I had to lean out of my hard-won career to have the kind of future that I felt happy with. So if you're a working mum listening to this, what can you do to be that role model for another woman? She may not yet have children, but she may be looking at you to see what's possible. How can you start sharing more of your insights? How can you start parenting out loud, normalising being a woman with career aspirations at the same time as raising a family? And if you're an employer listening to this, what can you do to highlight role models in your organisation? What can you do to stop women like me pulling the ripcord on their careers because they can't see a way to combine their work and motherhood in a successful and sustainable way? Let's give ourselves some great role models for when we look up, because our daughters are going to need this too. And if you're looking for relatable role models, then you're going to want to make sure you're on my email list, because in the next few weeks, I'm going to be sending out details of the How She Does It mini-series. For How She Does It, I'm interviewing 5 working mothers and pulling back the curtains on how they do it, revealing the secrets, strategies and lessons that they've learned along the way that we can all learn from. So you're not going to want to miss out on it. Head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk and make sure you've signed up to my emails, and you can make sure you don't miss out. And I'd love to hear any insights you've had from this episode. So drop me a note on social media or email me. I would genuinely love to hear from you. Thanks so much for hanging out with me in this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, take care. If you've enjoyed this episode of Wisdom for Working Mums, please share it on social media and with your friends and family. I'd love to connect with you too. So if you head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk, you'll find a link on how to do this. And if you love the show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review and subscribe. You'll be helping another working mum find this resource too. Thanks so much for listening.